Can you see my screen?
Randolph, yes, we can see your screen.
Transition okay?
Yep.
You want me to share my slides?
Just in a second, Dr. Zaki.
All right.
Okay, I've stopped sharing.
Okay, Zaki, would you like to try?
Okay, hold on. So here you go. Yep. Can you see my slides?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Next.
Okay. Next is Dr. Nohayati. Yep, I can see your slides. Okay, Datin Daria.
Okay, hold on now. A window. Can you see it? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to scroll through just to? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Veen, would you like to try?
Yep. Okay, I have a problem. Oh, wait. Yes. Okay. Can you see?
Not yet.
Now?
Oh, yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So it's already 10. I think Randolph is already. We can start. And presenters.
Randolph on mute.
Okay, I'm not a mute now. Okay, just a reminder to everyone, if you have your mic turned on, can you please switch it off so that we don't have feedback during the presentation? Secondly, if you have any questions, we received some questions together with your registration. But if you have additional questions, you can post it. You can post it in the chat section. For those of you who have posted questions already, I think throughout the course of today's discussion, I think most of those questions will be answered. So we'll start in a few minutes' time.
Someone sharing their screen. Holly Barclay. Can you click on stop presenting, please? Thank you.
So it's okay. Shall we start, everyone? Okay. So first of all, thank you everyone for taking time off to join our webinar this morning. I think for some of us, it's for some people, I think it's a public holiday, so they were probably unable to join. But I think today is a good day, and I hope that you actually have a fruitful discussion with us today. Okay, so first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Randolph. I'm an environmental consultant with ERE Consulting Group. I've been a consultant for more than 12 years now, and I lead the company's water resources division. Okay. Next, let me just briefly introduce our fellow panelists. First of all, I have Dr. Zaki Zainuddin. Dr. Zaki is a water quality specialist. He has over 15 years of experience working in the field of water quality and water modeling. I like to look at Dr. Zaki as a 24/7 specialist. Okay, he has extensive experience in academia, in research, and also field experience. If there's any river which is polluted in the country, Dr. Zaki will know about it. Okay. Okay, next I have, besides that, Dr. Zaki is also an associate of ours, and we are presently working on the revision of the National Water Quality Standards for Malaysia, a study commissioned by the Department of Environment last year. Okay. Next, I have Dr. Nohayati Abdullah from UTM. She is a senior lecturer at UTM and also an associate director with UTM's international office in KL. Okay, her area of work is mostly, I think, on industrial wastewater, but I think today she will share a whole range of experience. Okay, next up is Datin Daria Matthew, and Daria is a senior manager at WWF Malaysia, and also she is actually the lead coordinator for the Conserving Freshwater Habitats program. Okay, so she has been working in the field of freshwater resources. Right now, I think concentrating on the KL region. Okay, Datin Daria is also a former associate of ours. Actually, I met her more than 12 years ago in 2007 while we were working on this development coordination study for Fraser's Hill. Okay, a study also commissioned by the Department of Environment. Okay. Finally, I have my colleague Chua Ling, and she's my team member and also working on water resources and water quality. And she also has been involved in a range of studies related to these areas of work. And today, I think later today, you'll see a bit of technical part in terms of research and development in the field of water quality. Okay. Okay, right now I'll just give a brief overview. Let me just get my slides ready. Okay, so what I'd like to do, first of all, is just to set the stage for today's discussion. Okay, our webinar today is titled, Has COVID-19 Given Our Readers Hope? And actually, we know since 18 March 2020, Malaysia has implemented the movement control order to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in the country. The MCO remains what I see as our core weapon against COVID-19. But as a result, actually, a number of non-essential economic activities has been halted. This actually is similar with most countries around the world. Yeah, with people retreating and economic activities being minimized, I believe that pressure on the environment has reduced substantially. And there appears to be many positive stories. Okay, for example, in Nara, Japan, wild deers have started to roam urban areas in the absence of human populations. In Wales, a similar thing has happened. The mountain goats have now descended into the streets. Okay, just 1 week after the stay-at-home order. Okay, in Venice, Italy, the canals now actually flow much clearer. And of course, this is actually due to the absence of motorboat traffic, okay, which tended to bring out all the sediments from the bottom. Similarly, in India, in the Delhi Jal boat, which is actually the boat responsible for water supply, okay, has stated that they believe that the river is looking cleaner, although they are still in the midst of testing the river in terms of water quality. Okay, and of course, much closer to home, I think you've probably seen this in the newspaper. This image of satellite data showing a reduction in nitro oxygen levels due to less motorized vehicles on the road. Okay, in relation to rivers, of course, we know that Sungai Pinang has now turned green from what was before a dark river that was heavily polluted. Okay, similarly, in Melaka, Sungai Melaka is reportedly to be flowing clearer based on DID's observations, and they say it has shown some signs of self-healing. And of course, we have seen many reports in the newspaper on the Klang River. Okay, so it's believed to have improved in terms of water quality, and it seems that it's been getting better. And this is attributed to less waste and pollution going into the river. And also, local communities themselves have also reported that the river now looks much better than before. Okay, however, at the same time, we are still faced with a number of issues related to water quality. For example, there was a disruption of Sungai Selangor, and this was probably due to odor pollution. Similarly, actually, right now, the waste that's being picked up in the river now includes face masks, gloves, and sanitizer bottles. Okay, so against this backdrop, I have a few questions to pose to our stakeholders and also to pose to everyone. Okay, what measures should first of all, has the river really improved in Malaysia? Okay. Second, if it has, is this a sign that environmental damage can be reversed? And if so, what measures should stakeholders undertake post-MCO to better manage our rivers? Or will we adopt a business as usual approach? Right now, right after the MCO is lifted, I think a lot of economic activities will come back online, and there will be some catching up to do. And what is the impact of that? That said, should we be more cautious? Okay, so to start off with the first question, let me call upon Dr. Zaki to provide an overview on the first question that I asked. Actually, has river water quality really improved in Malaysia?
Okay, thank you very much, Randolph. Just give me a second to bring up my slides here. Okay, can you see my slides? You can see my slides? You can hear me, right?
Yes, Ken.
Okay, all right. Now, okay, first and foremost, good morning. Assalamualaikum everyone. Hope everyone is well this morning. Thank you to ERE for inviting me here today to be part of this forum webinar. So I'm going to be talking about river water quality, technical part of river water quality during MCO. So as we all know, and as what Anda presented just now, there have been some perceived improvements in river water quality. So these are pictures that I got off the Department of Irrigation in Drainage, their Facebook page. So you can see, like in Sungai Linggi, for example, before the movement control order, the water quality was turbid, and during the PKP, there seems to be a perceived improvement in river water quality. And similarly, Sungai Linggi on the other side also, there's this perceived improvement, and this kind of, and in Sungai Malacca and then Sungai Kim Kim, all seem to have improved in terms of this visual appearance. So this was actually reported quite extensively in the media, not just inherent to Malaysia, but also in various parts of the world. It's visual improvement in river water quality. So yeah, it seems that some of the river water quality, some of the rivers have improved in quality in various parts of the country. However, I would also like to remind, perceived improvement is one thing, actual improvement is another. Sometimes it's a matter of point of view. This slide of Prince William, taking from one angle, you can show him. If you look at it only from one angle, he's giving as if he's giving the finger. But if you look at it from an angle, actually he's holding three fingers up. So this is very careful when you talk about improvement. Improvement is there's definitely some perceived improvement in certain river systems, but whether that can be substantiated with scientific data, that's another matter. Now, this is the official water quality result that has been published by the Department of Environment, Malaysia. The problem with substantiating water quality during the MCO is that there are some limitations with regards to sampling. Now, thank goodness, the Department of Environment actually maintains online telemetry stations. There are 29 online stations as of the moment. So these stations monitor parameters like dissolved oxygen, temperature, conductivity, salinity, BOD equivalent, COD equivalent, TSS, ammonium, pH, and certain hydrocarbons. Now, the measurements are taken at every 30 minutes interval, and they are logged. So these are continuous stations. The data is monitored on an online, continuously online, and that's pulled to a data center that's located in DOE HQ. So this is a sensor. This is their sensor. An example of one of the sensors in one of the stations. So as I said, there are 29 of these sensors, online sensors all over the country. So this is the setup. These are my students from UTM. I brought them to doing Harian Sekitar Negara. All right. So this is an example of the layout of the telemetry station data center that is in DOE HQ. Now, so the data basically gives the WQI output from the online stations, and that gives the WQI classification, the water quality index classification. So that preliminary analysis that was done by DOE because of certain hindrances to do sampling, manual sampling during the station. That data was the data that was the status, the water quality status was actually from the online stations, not the manual stations per se. Yeah? So based on data from the online stations that they have at the moment, 8 stations out of the 29 stations showed water quality improvement. Water quality improvement. Whereas another 8 stations, which is another 28%, did not show any improvement. But ironically, 13 stations from their online continuous stations, which makes up 40% of the stations, actually showed deterioration in water quality, which is very, very interesting. Right? Yeah? So sometimes I mean, perceived improvement is one thing, but finally the data is showing this, what I call this, these variations. Now, the data also shows that, but there are some average improvement in BOD and COD. But again, BOD reduced by 6% and ammonia by 5%. But it's also important to remember that these are BOD equivalents as monitored by the online stations. Average ammonia generally remained unchanged. And TSS and garbage also increase during rainfall in certain watersheds. Now, this is another thing. When you talk about improvement pre and during MCO, there has to be an apple-to-apple comparison. But the tricky part is the MCO more or less happened when it was more or less the beginning of the rainy season. So there was an interference in terms of weather influence on river water quality and runoff influence. So to say there was a blanket improvement, you have to be very careful about that. And that's why when I gave this, when I was asked by the media on my thoughts, I just said that it's not a blanket improvement. Sure, there are certain improvements in certain watersheds, but it's not a blanket improvement because water quality is a function of pollution within a specific watershed. And as you know, the demography of pollution in different watersheds is different. So it really depends on the distribution, the density, the demography of pollution. I'll give an example. Let's just say you have a watershed that is a prevalently rural watershed. Is located perhaps in the outskirts. So that is prevalently say affected by erosion, land clearing activities and whatnot. So in that kind of predicament, there may not be a significant improvement in water quality. Things may remain status quo. But if you go into another watershed, say a fairly industrialized watershed, so Sungai Tintin, Pasir Gudang, for example, maybe during the MCO, there was restriction in terms of the plants that are operating there. So in terms of pollution that's being discharged, there's reduction. So sure, you'll really some improvement in TTM, and sure enough, that was what was reported. So the key point is this: is when we talk about river water quality is a function of the ability of the river to take in the waste versus the amount of pollution that is going into the river. This is very important. The river has a natural cleansing ability to take in the pollution. in essence, if the pollution that goes into the river exceeds the assimilative capacity, then the river becomes polluted. Whereas if the load is lesser than the assimilative capacity, the river doesn't become polluted. And these are all quantifiable. These can be quantified to mathematical modeling, to mathematical calculations. These can be quantified. So factors that influence the assimilative capacity, the ability of the river to dilute in the waste, of course, the river size. How big is the river? A river that is bigger, that is larger, tend to be able to take in more waste. The river that is smaller would be in size and volume would be more sensitive to pollution. So, even that, the bigger and smaller rivers is also influenced by hydrological changes. During the dry period, where there's lesser dilution volume compared to the high flow season, that also affects the carrying capacity. And then, of course, you have the biochemical, the chemistry processes taking place in the water column. So all of this affects the river carrying capacity. Now, in my final slide, I like to show this slide. I always like to show this slide. In a river system, you have many types of pollution sources that's released into the river. You have industrial sources, you have sewage treatment plants, you have sewage sources, you have sources that's not subject to EQA. Say like on this part, on the left part of the screen. So all these sources are contributing about 230 kilograms of pollutant, whatever type of pollutant, into the river. But then again, the river carrying capacity is at 250 kilograms per day. As I showed you earlier, as long as the pollution loading doesn't exceed this carrying capacity, the river won't become polluted. Okay, won't become polluted. And then suddenly here, you have an illegal discharge going to the river at 40 kilograms per day. So now the new pollution loading in the river is 270. Whereas the river carrying capacity is only 250. So now at 270 kilograms per day, because of this illegal discharge going into the river becomes polluted because it has exceeded the carrying capacity because of this illegal discharge. But here is where, but this is the point to ponder. Sure, this is an illegal discharge, discharging at 40 kilograms per day of waste. But then again, all these other sources, industrial sources, sewage sources, other sewage sources not subject to the law, they are discharging 230 kilograms per day, where this one illegal guy is only discharging 40 kilos per day. So does that mean that he is the only person to blame for the river pollution status? In my view, not necessarily. Even in my view, as long as you are discharging into the river, whether you meet the legal requirement or you don't meet the legal requirement, you are taking a portion of the carrying capacity. That's something that we need to remember. Okay. All right. So I think that's my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaki. Just one question for you before I move on to the next speaker. So, do you think the MCO is a significant event in regards to water quality, in terms of all the things that has been reported?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I said, undoubtedly, that in certain river catchments, there is improvement in terms of river water quality. As I said, I don't deny that. That's the fact of the matter. But whether it's a blanket improvement, I doubt it. It's not a blanket improvement. That's the first question. And actually, there was another question from one of the participants asking whether the river water quality, even the ones that has improved, whether there has returned to baseline conditions. Actually, baseline means original condition. There was actually a letter published in a renowned journal a few days ago, science journal, stating the same matter, stating that assuming that they are assuming that the river water quality has returned to baseline, quote unquote, baseline status. Mentioning that fact lah. But then I know now there are also another group of scientists that's disputing that fact. Yes, there is improvement, but not necessarily to baseline. That's a different story, you see. You have improvement in water quality, but is it improvement to baseline? Baseline is a different thing. Because as I said just now, that really depends on the amount of pollution that's being discharged into the river. And I know there is the efforts now by this other group of scientists that are saying that okay, sure, there's improvement in the in baseline condition, but not there's improvement in water quality status, but not necessarily to baseline levels. And I know a response is being planned. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaki. I tend to agree with you. I think we have seen some improvement, but I think like you said, like if it's down to baseline levels, I think probably not. Okay, but I think that's it. Of course, we need more data. We need to collect more data to better understand the situation. And if there is improvement and it's been at least at some significant amount, then I think maybe we can start to look into this. Okay, let me move on to Dr. Nurhayati next. Okay.
Thank you, Randolph. I'm just going to share my slide now. Okay, can everyone see my slide? And can everyone hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I'm Dr. Nurhayati from University Technology Malaysia. Thank you ERE Consulting Group for having me in this session, and it feels very nice to have a little share of some of the experiences I have had working with the NGOs. Besides UTM, my daily job, I work for the Malaysian Water Association, as well as a fellow of the International Water Association. So my title is basically, because Dr. Zaki has touched upon the technology side, the engineering side, the science sides of how a river actually works, and then how the data supports life of a river. So my title is Once Upon a River, and what matters most to us before the MCO and after the MCO. So as a woman, I would like to quote Audrey Hepburn. She said, "Water is life and clean water means health." So obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic that affects everyone worldwide, we know the importance of water as a source for health. And then there's a quote that says that thousands have lived without love, but not one without water, to show that clean water is very, very important. And it has raised many questions for the water supply and wastewater sector around the world. Since the pandemic, everybody has been looking into various aspects of wastewater treatment, as well as water supply, as to how to reassure public about potential concerns. So organizations such as IWA and MWA, who provide water and wastewater services management, responded to this and cope with the direct impact of the pandemic of on their workforces. And then increased attention has been dedicated to crucial contribution of the importance of hand washing in preventing the spread of the disease. And this has been highlighted on the importance of access to clean water supply for sanitation and hygiene purposes worldwide. Similarly to what Randolph has begun the session with, as we can see in the newspaper, online, on social media, everybody is focusing on how the movement control order, which come into force on March 18, has led to about a 43% reduction in the total amount of rubbish extracted from Klang River. So Bernama, for example, has reported similar thing. And then there's a clear indication that the minimization of movement of people and business operations can actually help a river heal. So Dr. Zaki has indicated some data that supports this. However, we have to also be careful because sometimes what we see with our own eyes, that invisible to the eye, is not the same with what is hidden in the data itself when the river water quality is analyzed. Okay. And then I share again this photo. Is very, very nice photo by the star. Cleaner waterways and rivers during MCO. Why it is important to have these images? Because what matters most in keeping the river quality maintained post MCO is actually how we as public reacted to whatever initiatives being done by the government and all of the stakeholders for water sector. It is very important for us as public to play our role in contributing to maintaining the river water quality to be as good as it is and even better post the MCO. So it's nice to be looking at images like this because these are the images that we want to enjoy in real life, as well as when we have these sort of images imprinted in our mind, that sort of give the sense of appreciation as to how we may contribute to nature in its own healing process. So we have seen this photo just now. Once pitch black, now jade green. So just look at the river, Penang River in Penang. Before MCO, the color is black and then it doesn't look inviting, and then there's no aesthetic value that can be associated to it. And then after a couple of weeks of MCO, the river quality seems to be improved. The river water seems to have a very nice color associated to it. The public and the community seems to enjoy this type and this kind of water quality in rivers that we have. And then just sharing with you, for example, in Istanbul, wild animals enjoy freedom of a quieter world. So they began to come up and then really enjoy the cleaner river water. So it has also been reported that, for example, turtles appear to be returning to Thai beaches. And then the Himalayas are clearly visible from Delhi for the first time in years. And then dolphins are seen closer to the shores in Istanbul. Here in our country, the skies are blue, the air is cleaner and clear, less noise, and we hear a cacophony of the sweet sounds of nature that we would never have heard or noticed before. So our rivers have also never been so clean. Okay, and then we have been staying indoors. We have been trying to help the frontliners to curb the pandemic, COVID-19. And we can say that there have been minimal pollutants towards the environment because factories have been temporarily ceased operations and fewer cars on the roads. So in over a month, and now we're going to the next level of MCO, reports and headlines have surfaced that rivers across Malaysia look much, much clearer and cleaner. And then, as reported, we even had wildlife returning to enjoy the clean waters. So as human being, I mean, as public, as someone who lives in this world, how would you feel to have all of this maintained post-MCO? So it's part of our job to think of what matters most in terms of protecting the continued improvement of our river water quality. So we never know the worth of water till the well is dry. It's our job to returning the soul back into the stream because you see, no matter how much we speak about technologies, how much we speak about science, without actions, nothing is worth. So I share with you again these beautiful images shared by Brita Harian online. The river water that is usually black is now cleaner and does not smell as foul as it did before. The locals said that when the river occasionally recedes, he can see small fishes more clearly than he had in 10 years ago. So that's a good thing, right? So this is what we want to see. This is also what we want our future generations to see. Sungai Melaka, as shared by Randolph, so you can see the small fishes in the river is cleaner and greener. And then the interview with the locals revealed that the river has not achieved this level of cleanliness in a long, long time. And then they observe fishes and monitor lizards sighted in the water. So this is a good sign that the river is actually healing in its own way. So before the MCO, Sungai Melaka water was known for being smelly and murky with teh tarik colored water. So this is definitely something that we are not seeing now post the MCO after a couple of weeks. And then Sungai Gisir. So I'm not familiar with some of the rivers, but I'm sharing with you some source of the pictures from Malaysia kini. This river runs through Hulu Kelang and it has been noticeably cleaner. So you can see left picture is black and then the right picture is much cleaner, jade green color since the MCO started. And just to share with you the quality of river water that can enhance our lifestyle. So these things can happen in Malaysia too, and not just in Japan. Japan has many good rivers. They have so many clean rivers, and all sorts of interesting hype activities takes place in their beautiful and clean rivers. So this is something that we wish to look forward to for Malaysia post MCO. We want to have these sort of activities, this sort of river water quality in our country. And then I was in Sarawak a couple of months back for a water quality project. And so this is very nice, something that we should be aiming for doing post the MCO. This sort of water, river water associated activities for the public so that we could appreciate more on what we have in nature. So once upon a river, what matters most? I put 3 key points here: raise awareness and educate stakeholders, in which many NGOs are currently doing. The MWA and IWA are doing lots and lots of online platform and sharing. And we know that reaching out to public and water stakeholders is very important. Number 2 is to promote civic consciousness and empower local action. It's our job to take action, and is our job also, is our role to support all the initiatives in terms of restoring and protecting rivers. And number 3 is to support capacity building and networking of individuals, communities, and organizations in river protection and continued restoration of river. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nohayati. Maybe I can just pose one question, which is slightly out of the topic. Maybe, what do you think is the role of social media right now in terms of river water quality improvement? One thing that I noticed during my research is that I think we all know this, that there were a lot of fake images coming in terms of some of the positive signs that we saw. For example, the dolphins in Italy, etc. There was actually all sort of pictures that were not true, and they tended to mislead. So although there are some positive benefits in terms of social media, there are also some negative implications. So what do you think is what role does social media have to play?
I think our connection and world is beyond borders. So everybody gets information firsthand in the morning from their smartphones. In these regards, of course, there'll be some fake news, there'll be some fake photos, some misleading information. So it's the job of the role of the public to really sieve whatever information that they receive. But to me, good information, it's always good to encourage and nurture the spirits of the public in terms of supporting nature in its own healing process. Because these days, looking at good photos, looking at good news, having heard about how a river is actually recovering its life, is something that is nurturing and nourishing for the soul. I think science and public awareness is very important. So I know science, Dr. Zaki knows science, we know the background and the engineering background of river, how it survived, how the data shows how might we improve the COD, BOD, pH, and the overall holistic health of a river. But if people keep on, throwing rubbish inside the river, and then not appreciating that this is actually the source of our drinking water, and then not having the awareness that if we keep on polluting river and not looking after how industries is being done in Malaysia or in whichever country, wherever country, so science will not work without public engagement. Science will not work without political empowerment. So science and engineering will not be able to solve whatever problems that the river is facing, because river is also living with the community. Community also live with the river. So we need each other. So in terms of that, I think it is really important to increase public awareness, and it is really important to continue to keep educating our public. So I might not be here today. I mean, in future, I might be here today now talking about this and encouraging the public, and then putting the soul back into the streams that we have. But for future generations, what will happen to them if we don't look after the rivers now and today?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nurhayati. Just let me just take two questions here. Number one is from Caris Wong, and she asked, does the DID have information on maximum loading capacity and current average daily loading that's being received from factories in each river? That question has been posed to Dr. Zaki, but I can answer the question with a straight no, but I'll let him explain a bit more. The second one is actually from Haslawati Baharudin, and she asks, is there ongoing data in terms of comparison between the river prior to MCO and after? Maybe I'll just pass to Dr. Zaki for a quick one before we move on to the next speaker.
Okay, all right. Okay, you can hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Caris, for the question. Yeah, as Randolph said, the long and short of it is no. The long and short of it is no. But I'll tell you the reason behind that. The reason behind that is because, as I mentioned earlier, and I gave some comments in a documentary recently. It came out in Channel News Asia. One of the issues of our regulations is we regulate discharges solely in terms of concentration. We don't regulate flow per se. So when we don't regulate flow, what I call this flow in our laws in terms of pollution discharges, you cannot derive load, because load is derived from concentration and flow. So that's the first issue. So whether it's DOE or whether it's DID or whether it's any agency in the country, because you don't regulate the flow, you can't derive the load. Whereas in terms of carrying capacity of the river itself, that is done on an almost ad hoc basis, I would say. So every few years there will be some river studies to derive the carrying capacity of a river relative to the loading. Actually, when those studies take place, then only they start measuring the pollution loads. So the latest most comprehensive study to date, I guess, would be study by Semenya study done by DOE, ERE being the consultant, and then there was another study in Sarawak by NREB, National Resources and Environment Board, for 6 rivers in Sarawak for carrying capacity and loading. And that's actually, to me, is the good news, because there is more awareness nowadays in terms of taking into consideration loading influences on the river. Because as I mentioned earlier, yeah, sure. I mean, we need we need the awareness and whatnot. But as I said, even if we comply to limits as per the law right now, the river can become polluted. I will tell you of one story lah. Sorry, I'm not taking a bit longer to answer this question. I'll tell you of one story of this river that we did in Johor. I'm not going to say where lah. So when we did the measurement of the source discharging into the river, I went with some DOE officers, and it was horrendous. The source that's coming from the smell alone was such a pungent odor going into the river. It was really bad, very pungent odor going into the river. And the river is actually the second most polluted river in the country. You can figure it out because of that one singular source. So when we did the sampling, the sample that we took and we sent to the lab for analysis, comply to limits in the law. So macam mana? Even in such a horrific state, you comply to the limits of the law, and you're polluting the river, and the river is not that big, as I said, because of limited carrying capacity, the river still become polluted. So that is the fact that we have to face, if you ask me. Okay. Thank you, Randolph.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zaki. So I think just to add on, I think there's been push for many years in terms of how we regulate pollution in the river. As Dr. Zaki mentioned, so I just put it again. we are measuring concentrations of pollutants, and we are not measuring loading of the river. And each river has its own capacity. So a big river may have a larger loading capacity, a smaller river will have a smaller loading capacity. However, as we measure in terms of concentrations, we don't take into consideration, okay, the condition of the river. And I think that's one thing that we are trying to address as we move forward. Okay, now let me move on to our next speaker, Datin Daria Matthew. Okay, so I think she will share her presentation right now. Okay, Daria.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Randolph. Good morning. Assalamualaikum to my fellow panelists and also to all listening in to this web forum. I apologize. I think, pardon the background noise. I think today a lot of people are out. So, you know, a lot of cars on the road, although it's still MCO. All right, so I think maybe I'll start by sharing my slides. Hold on, yeah. Right. Yeah, okay, so so in discussing the topic of this forum, I would like to begin by firstly recognizing as well as reminding ourselves that the COVID-19 health crisis has indeed highlighted the fundamental importance of access to clean water. And on top of that, also the need to protect the sources of that water. So all of us, we know that water doesn't just come from the tap. In the context of Malaysia, around 97% of our water supply, of our supply of fresh water, water that we get at home, attained from surface water, primarily rivers. Hence, what this means is protecting our water resource is essentially also about conserving, protecting, restoring, managing sustainably, and maintaining healthy rivers and their catchment areas. So we also know that there is a link between water, hand hygiene, and COVID-19. You know, we've been told hand washing, hand washing with clean water is one of the most effective barriers. It's also a critical line of defense against the spread of COVID-19 infection. But of course, this can only be done if there is sufficient supply of water. And this underlines the importance of ensuring water for all. Surely many of us are familiar, right, with the phrase fresh water for all, because it constitutes one of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, SDG number 6 in particular, which focuses on sustainable access to clean water, is also interlinked with SDG 3, as you can see in the slide. So SDG 3 is about ensuring good health. So, access to clean water is interlinked, and it also forms the key basis for achieving SDG 3. And just to recap, yeah, when we talk about SDGs, what we mean is the global blueprint, which contains 7 goals. These are adopted by United Nations member countries, including Malaysia. And the SDGs to guide actions by the different nations towards a better and sustainable future. For those of us, I believe many of us listening in today reside in Klang Valley. And I believe many would remember that amid the worsening COVID-19 outbreak, when it became very serious, around March. Also at that time, when the MCO was introduced, it came into effect around March 18. It was also during that time, at the eve of the MCO, when Selangor announced that the water supply Selangor announced about water supply disruption in several areas. There were 7 districts in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor at that time, which were going to be affected by unscheduled water disruption, because 4 of the water treatment plants on Sungai Selangor had to be shut down because of contamination. There was incident of contamination involving odor pollution. Unfortunately, the authorities managed to control the situation, and the treatment plant's operation were recovered. And the situation was back the water treatment plant were recovered and back to action, which was quite fast. So the water disruption wasn't very serious at that time. But within the same month, just 2 weeks after that, you will recall on 26 March, again, 3 of the 4 treatment plants on Sungai Selangor had to be suspended, and this time due to suspected diesel pollution. So as a result, 52% of account holders, in Selangor, they were faced with unscheduled water disruption. So during this time, when all of us are being asked to keep ourselves clean, wash our hands regularly, without water, this would be very difficult. And subsequently, 20 days later, after the 26th of March, some areas in Kuala Lumpur, again, were affected by water disruption. This was on April 17. And the number of the disruption lasted for 3 days. Right. So I'm showing on the slides, some of the newspaper articles, what came out in the media, showing river pollution during MCO. So we're actually getting both sides of the story. At the same time, the COVID-19 tells us, to really value water, how important water is, to prevent the infection of COVID-19. On one hand, a lot of the rivers are facing pollution, as they've always had pre-MCO. This is a common incidence in Kuala Lumpur, in Federal Territory, in Klang Valley. But through MCO as well, during that period, we did see, as has been said by Randolph and the other panelists just now, and there are a lot of pictures in the media showing that the river condition are improving. So when we come to the question, does COVID-19 give hope to our rivers? Well, I would agree with the other 2 panelists. I think yes, to a certain extent, as far as the MCO period is concerned, because with the MCO, factories and industries are shut down, construction work come to a halt, major events are cancelled. So many of us are seeing the positive effects on the natural environment. A lot of these are anecdotal evidence, based on observations. A layperson, looking at the color of a river, or seeing, rivers without floating rubbish, that will be interpreted by a layperson as, the river has improved. The river is cleaner. Very similar to, what Dr. Nurhayati has mentioned just now. She was also talking about the perspective of the civil society. But also as, the question given just now, what you see physically does not necessarily implies, the actual health of the river. So we have cleaner rivers, we have clearer waters, less trash, for example. And we know there are also figures to back up these anecdotal observations. I mean, one example would be the water quality data at the monitoring stations by DOE. Although Dr. Zaki also said just now that, some of the data, quite, I wouldn't say misleading, but some of the data raise more questions as well. But nevertheless, I think our rivers are actually healing. Rivers are given a chance to heal when the contributing pollutants, the factors that contribute to pollutants to the rivers are put on hold during the MCO. Therefore, the rivers are recovering. But of course, the worry now is whether the positive effects on our environment, including the improved river condition, a lot of people are worried that this may be short-lived. And many people actually think that, that will be the case. That once, things come back to normal, when MCO is lifted, that a lot of people are anticipating that, the situation pre-MCO would be seen again. That our rivers may again start to decline. With, for example, maybe certain industries may double up their operations, to generate more income to cover for revenue loss during the MCO. So again, here are some pictures that I've extracted from the media. Some of them are similar, has also been shown by the two panelists. It's interesting to see, this is purely based on observation, 3 locations along the Sungai Klang. Water samples were taken, and based on physical observation, the clarity of the river, it's, all 3 stations, samples taken from all 3 stations showed, the river, the water from the river being very clear. I mean, that's a positive sign, definitely. So from the NGO's perspective, what are NGOs doing? So I've summarized 3 points here. The first is basically the NGOs are in fact already taking necessary steps, even during the MCO period itself. NGOs are trying to capitalize on the social media, the digital platform, to reach out, to educate, advocate, communicate key messages to Malaysian public and other target audiences. I mean, that's the role of the NGO to begin with. With the restrictions imposed through the MCO, a lot of the NGOs in Malaysia and worldwide resorting to the digital platform, as a form of communication to reach out to the public, to the society. And here, the NGOs, the key messages that are being sent across by NGOs are, promoting sustainable practices. Even during MCO, when all of us are at home, there are still actions and practices that each and every one of us can do, that would contribute positively, towards the protection and conservation of the environment, including rivers. And a lot of the messaging also, NGOs also try to make strategic messaging by linking health perspectives and approach. For example, we highlight to the public that maintaining healthy ecosystems and resources, in this case, rivers included, these are crucial. If the ecosystems are healthy, therefore, the health of the public and community will also be healthy. Yeah, so the NGOs are making these interventions, during the MCO itself, because this is, in a way, it's opportunistic, but it's also strategic at the same time, because during the MCO, a lot of us can afford more time to reflect on our lifestyle, on our behavior. Hence, we have a better chance of being more receptive to consider and maybe to embrace also the eco-friendly behavioral change, together as part of the new normal post-MCO. I'm showing in the next few slides some examples of the key messages, the information, the activities that are being done by the major NGOs in Malaysia. Global Environment Center has been very active. They've done online webinars via Zoom, via Facebook Live, various sessions. They even do training of trainers on River Ranger, on water quality monitoring, via online. So it's actually really possible, even if you don't do it, via a physical or face-to-face session. They've also done, Insta video contest. But the contest is actually to promote best management practices. They include theme like water is life, river is lifeline. To get the public and society to not lose sight. We are indoors. The river, we don't see the river. The river is outside, but through messaging like this and through activities like this, we continue to promote and get the public to not forget, to not lose sight about river and their connection to river. Econites is another NGO that has been very active during this MCO period. They've recently introduced their School of Sustainability. This is an online series, very interesting, very innovative as well. They do webinars, panel discussions, and workshops. They also leverage on the different festivals that we have. The Ramadan, West Day, Earth Day, World Water Day. And also Friends of Taman Tugu with various partners, Econites is one of them. GEC is also another partner, and the Friends of Taman Tugu. They also had, various talks and activities, river talk on river pollution, the storytelling about river, a river for my family, that sort of thing, where it's participatory. Members of public can take part as well. Water Watch Penang as well had their Sembang session. I'm sure many of us know Prof. Chan. He is with Water Watch Penang. And Water Watch Penang also had a virtual talk focusing on water crisis, very, very focused on Penang. But the intention here is again, to keep everyone reminded, about the importance of water, the connection of water and river. WWF Malaysia, we also similarly, with the other NGOs, we also make use of our social media to also continuously, send out online information about green practices, including on water saving. Friends of Rivers Malaysia, all of us, I'm sure, knows about Datuk Sri Engineer Dr. Zaini Ujang. He has also, been very active. He's been posting a lot of information on his own social media platforms. He has also moderated a number of webinars, primarily on the topic of water and rivers. So the second point, in terms of role of NGOs, what are NGOs doing to manage and look at, how do we work towards environmental recovery post COVID-19 and post MCO. NGOs are participating in conversations to influence economic stimulus and recovery plans. For example, providing inputs around on ideas around healthy, resilient, and sustainable economy, which will benefit the environment and people. NGOs continue to call for greater recognition of nature and the environment and its values, and the need to include nature-based solutions in in any economic stimulus and recovery plans. So one example that I want to highlight is the APPG, which is the All Party Parliamentary Group. There is such a group in Malaysia. There are senators and member of parliaments who are members of this group. Civil societies, some civil society also are also represented in this group, on specifically the group on SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. WWF Malaysia is one of them. So this provides a very good platform. It's a very strategic platform for NGOs and civil society to be involved in discussions, in providing inputs on the economic stimulus and recovery agenda, which can be channeled to parliamentarians and policymakers. And the third areas where NGOs are playing a role is on supporting and calling for continuous collection of scientific evidence. We know, and Dr. Zaki has also said, as well as Dr. Nurhayati, we need scientific evidence. Robust water quality data, for example, will be very important, especially during the MCO period. This will really help, in terms of guiding the authorities in devising better environmental policies, post MCO. So so that they will be guided decision making. And here, there is a major role, for agencies like Department of Environment and many other agencies, and as well as, experts. We are not short of water quality experts in Malaysia, and, all of them have a role to play, including NGOs, because NGOs also do water quality monitoring. Right, so I think I'll stop there for now.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Daria. Okay, let me just move on to the final presentation this morning before I take all the questions together. Okay, we'll do that right at the end of the session. Okay, can I invite my colleague Chua Lee?
Hi. Okay. Thanks, Randolph. Let me just share my slide. Okay. Can you see? My slide is on, right? All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining this forum, especially on a public holiday. And it's a Monday. I am Li Ying from ERE Consulting Group, and I've been a consultant for about more than 8 years now. So I'm in the water sector, and most of the projects that I've been involved in are related to water resources and water quality, studies on pollution loading, river water quality improvements, and we also do water quality modeling. The projects we've worked on range from national and state level river catchment studies, policies, to even water quality improvement actions for local communities. So today, what I want to share with you is actually some of our observations and findings from our previous work, and also some post-COVID opportunities, quote unquote. So as Dr. Zaki mentioned earlier, the water quality of a river is dependent on the waste assimilative capacity of the river. So if your pollution load is less than the waste assimilative capacity of the river doesn't become polluted and the water quality is maintained. Whereas if you have a larger pollution load, the pollution load is bigger than what the river can receive, then of course the river becomes polluted. For example, if you look at, imagine the large rivers in Malaysia, like Sungai Kinabatangan and Sungai Rajang, where you have huge the river is huge, and let's say you have 5 palm oil mills in the river, at discharging into the river. So the river itself may be able to accommodate what the pollution load that is being discharged from the 5 factories. But let's say we take the same 5 factories discharging the same load and we put it into a smaller river catchment, for instance, Sungai Melaka. So if the same 5 factories discharging that amount of load into the river, I think Sungai Melaka will koyak lah, because the capacity of Sungai Melaka is smaller than what Kinabatangan is. So this is what we mean by when we talk about the assimilative capacity or carrying capacity of a river versus the pollution load that goes into it. So a few years back, we actually carried out a study for a river in Malaysia on pollution load control. And what we did was to identify all the beneficial users of the river. And most rivers in Malaysia have similar beneficial users because rivers are mainly, it functions as maintenance of healthy aquatic habitats and ecosystems. It is also a source of water supply for both our potable water in the taps and also processes for industries and everything. Like what Datin Daria said just now, 97% of our freshwater supply comes from our rivers. Rivers also have value as for recreational users, source of water for fish production, whether you have it in the cage cultures in the river or for aquaculture, source of water for livestock drinking, and also, of course, source of water for agriculture. So basically, it's also a source of water for our food production in the country. When we did this study, we had the river catchment is quite similar to most of the rivers in Malaysia as well. The upper catchment, is mostly forested agriculture lands. As the river flow downstream, there'll be development coming up. You have villages, then eventually you get townships and all that. That particular catchment is also very actively developing. So there's a lot of new developments going on. This is a construction site for residential areas. And also there's sand mining in the rivers, in this particular river. And also this river is water, it also supplies water quality to parts of Klang Valley lah. The water quality of the river is not too bad, but could be better. On top of that, we also documented all the pollution sources that we can find in the catchment. Typical, as with most river catchments in Malaysia, we have pollution from industrial areas, from sewage treatment plants, landfills, and then we have all the others like fish pond discharge, livestock farms, restaurants, food courts, hawker stalls, car wash, and this middle picture is actually from a wet market. So you can see, I'm not sure if it's clear, the water in the drain is actually like dark red in color. Basically, it was chicken blood lah in the river. So this is what is going into our rivers, our sources of pollution. And for the study, we actually collected a lot of data. We collected data from long-term water quality monitoring data from the Department of Environment for whatever monitoring stations they have in the catchment. We also did water quality sampling, and we also collected samples from all the pollution sources, not all, like representative sets of samples from each group of pollution sources. So in this picture, technician is actually collecting sample from some drain in a wet market. So with all that, we actually want to do a water quality modeling to predict the scenario of pollution load reduction. So if we can reduce loads in the specific loads of pollution in the catchment, what may the outcome be to the river? So for example, the first one is on sewage treatment plants, because sewage treatment plants has the highest loading by premise and cumulatively for ammoniacal nitrogen. So this is mainly due to the large volume of effluent discharge. You know how Dr. Zaki mentioned just now that a pollution load is two components. You have your flow, which is the quantity of discharge, and you have your concentration, the quality of discharge. So relative to all of the pollution sources, sewage treatment plants have the largest volume of effluent discharge because they are servicing all the population of the catchment, right? So what we did was we prescribed a load reduction to just the top 50 STPs in the catchment. There were about 100 over sewage treatment plants within the whole catchment. So we ranked them, the ones with the highest loads. We reduced their load by 50%. We didn't reduce the load by 50%. We reduced their load by reducing the concentration that they could discharge. So this is the result of a water quality modeling. How do you read this is the x-axis is actually the length of the river. 35 is the upstream of the river, and 0 is the downstream of the river. So the river is about 35 kilometers long from upstream to downstream. And as you can see, the ammoniacal nitrogen concentration in the river increases as you go downstream. So upstream is quite pristine, nothing much going on there. But as you go downstream, the pollution sources start coming in because you have your towns, your sewage treatment plants, everything else. So it just goes in and then it increases to about class 4 levels. So when we did the prescription of a load reduction, this is just a theoretical. We didn't make anyone shut down their sewage treatment plant. You actually can see a reduction of ammoniacal nitrogen in the river. So this is what it is, and the purple line shows after the top 50 STPs reduce their loads. So that there is possibility of water quality improvements in the river in regards to ammoniacal nitrogen. Another example is for biochemical oxygen demand, BOD. So in this exercise, we are looking at restaurants, wet markets, laundromats, and car wash. So restaurants are the highest load contributor, followed by wet markets, laundromats, and car wash. What we did was we had two scenarios. One is a 50% reduction, and the second one is a 100% reduction, just to try it out. So this is what we'll see. This is the existing BOD concentration in the river. Again, this is different. It's a tributary. It's 18 kilometers long, upstream to downstream. So with 50% reduction of BOD, you actually see a fall, an improvement in BOD in the rivers. 100% reduction would be even better. But just from this, you can see that even if you reduce the pollution load from restaurants by 50%, you actually see an improvement in the water quality of the river. 50% could be like, reduce operations or better waste management practices, things like that. But we also have to remember that the water quality modeling, to an extent, it has limitations. It's academic sometimes. It gives us a snapshot of possibilities, but it may not be exact in real life because there are a lot of other variables that sometimes we cannot capture in our model. Like, for instance, in this whole thing, I did not mention non-point sources, which are like runoff from construction sites and all that. There's also the unrecorded pollution sources, because we can find as many as we can, but there are always pollution sources that might fall through the cracks, or it's very hard to document. The weather factor, sometimes with the weather gives us a variation of outcomes as well. So to me, the MCO was an excellent opportunity to observe what happens when pollution sources get switched off. Because prior to this, when we did our modeling, this is what we aspire, we hope it can achieve, but we could never turn off, stop restaurants from operating or things like that. But the MCO actually gave us the opportunity of that. So during the MCO, most of the industries were not operating. So most restaurants have reduced operations, about maybe because there's no dining, so there were no washing of dishes in the back alleys and things like that. Some of them are not even open. You don't have roadside stalls. There's no food courts. Commercial car washes car wash operations were not in operation. Sand mining operations, I think, were halted. Many of the pollution sources were also not operating, especially during MCO 1 and 2. Although at the same time, we still have consistent pollution sources, which are like the sewage system, which is an essential service, so the STPs were still discharging. And we have silage being discharged from households, from the restaurants that are operating. Most probably the concentration might have shifted, maybe lesser now in commercial areas, more from residential areas. Some of the industries were also operating, but at a reduced capacity. So during the MCO, it actually gave us that scenario where you can, what happens if the pollution load was reduced. So generally, I think yes, due to the reduction of loads, of pollution loads into the river, there may be some water quality improvements in our river. But at the same time, we also have to remember that some pollution loads don't just stop. They just get transferred to different parts, different areas. Like for instance, people don't go out so much to restaurants. So your commercial area, silage might have reduced, but people cook more at home. So if the wastewater from your kitchen sink that does not go into the sewage system goes out into the drain, so the contribution of silage from households will increase, but from residential areas will increase. That said, I was thinking about some of the research opportunities that we can do post-MCO. Like, firstly, on water quality trends. I think it's very, very important and very interesting to see the data trend before, during, and after MCO. Although during MCO, we might have a limited amount of data, but it'd be interesting to see were there any changes and how big were the changes and what were the parameters, because the parameters actually indicate to us what are the pollution sources that are contributing to it. So it'll be interesting to see, like, someone pick a catchment, a small catchment, and then do this. And from there, you can actually pinpoint what are the pollution sources that are actually affecting the water quality of the river the most. And through that, can look into opportunities of whether is it possible to continue reducing the load from those pollution sources. The second one is about maintaining good water quality. So the issue here now is that because post-MCO, people are economy will try to pick up again. And as we know, the environment typically has the lowest priority. Everyone wants to recoup their losses and all that. So maybe investment into pollution control technology will be, the bottom of the list, because it will be extra expenses. But can the pollution reduction that happen during MCO, can it be maintained? Is it sustainable? Is it feasible? But I think at the end of the day, everyone has to remember that it's a vicious cycle, that if you don't care about the pollution reduction that's going to river, at the end of the day, it still goes back to your water supply. So it's a cycle. If you save costs on one side, you end up having to increase the cost on the other side, which is on treatment or protection of water sources, resources and things like that. So I think that's the end of my presentation for now. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Ling. Okay, I'll just go through some questions right now. I may post some to some of our panelists. First of all, in terms of data, of course, we do have data. The Department of Environment still monitors data, although during the MCO period, of course, most data was from the automated monitoring stations. Okay, so it would be interesting to compare data before and after MCO, and also compare data with the same period or over the previous years. So I think that is something that can be put in motion after the MCO is lifted. And it will be interesting to see whether or not there are significant results, a result of the MCO. There was another question in terms of what is the role of local authorities. So actually, as Ling has just showed, actually local authorities have a significant role to play in river water quality improvement. The Department of Environment, for example, only monitors large pollution sources, the factories, etc. However, there's many smaller pollution sources which fall outside their authority. What you can see, wet markets, car washers, etc. They also contribute, and of course, food stalls, etc. And that's actually a significant load. Okay, to another question in terms of what are the sources of pollution? I think Ong Kiam Min has actually asked what are the sources of pollution? Actually, based on long-term data, probably sewage treatment plants are a major source of pollution. Don't blame IWK, you have to blame yourselves, okay? Because everyone here actually contributes to sewage, okay? The issue right now is actually, as mentioned by all the previous speakers, we've been monitoring and regulating data based on concentration loads, on concentrations, but not on loading. And I think that's something that we have to move forward in. Okay, I think the more important thing is loading, okay, not only on concentration. The next one from Holly actually early on was actually what is actually we have a new ministry, the ministry CASA. What is the role of the ministry right now as we move forward? I would suggest the ministry, same thing with as what the Department of the Environment has been doing, to look very much into loading. Okay. The Department of Environment has already commissioned a number of studies in terms of river water quality improvement, and they already started looking into the aspect of carrying capacity. But I think it's time that we actually move things forward at a much faster pace. Okay. Then let me see. Okay, those are just a few lists of questions, but maybe I'll go back to Dr. Zaki in terms of the pollution sources. Okay, besides SDP, another major pollution source in our rivers are total suspended solids. Okay, these are sediments. And right now, as a country, we are still at a high rate of development. And I think Ling has showed you in terms of construction sites, etc. Unfortunately, all of these are major sources of pollution. And as Dr. Zaki has mentioned, all these areas actually during MCO are still open in the sense that although work is not being done, but the area is left bare. And what you see in the river actually after heavy rainfall is suspended sediments. What you don't see is actually in terms of sewage. Okay, so water may look clear, but I would advise you don't take a drink or don't go into the river, because even though it's clear, it may be still very, very polluted. Okay, maybe just Dr. Zaki, a quick overview.
Right. Hello, sorry. On what? Sorry, Adolf, again? The pollution sources, is it? Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry. Major pollution sources that you need to address.
Okay. As I said, the pollution sources, because I have to give a general answer, so I have to be as general as possible. The significant pollution sources is very much river basin specific, as I mentioned previously. Now, if you're talking about an urban setting, an urban river setting, then typically the major sources of pollution undoubtedly will be sewage. And I said just now, whether they meet the regulation or not, that's a separate issue. What matters is the total loading that is being discharged into the river. And as I said, and as Randolph mentioned too just now, uh, don't blame IWK. IWK is just doing their job to meet the legal requirements. But before IWK was there, to be honest with all of you, before IWK was there, the situation was a lot worse. When things were still under what I call this was not ministered by the IWK, was still the sewage management was ministered by the local government. But nonetheless, sewage is a prevalent contributor in an urban setting. Now, the issue to address that issue um, is not necessarily in terms of treatment, because when you talk about treatment is one of the ways. It means you improve the effluent quality that's being released from the sewage treatment plants to a lower concentration before you release it to the river. So that's within the carrying capacity of the river. But of course, there's a cost implication in terms of that. If you do that, there's a cost implication. So treatment technologies is one of the ways. It's not the only way. But if you were to go that way, then I think Atika asked the question just now. There should be some incentives by the government for them to upgrade to more advanced treatment technologies for these sewage treatment plants to use more advanced treatments. But I said that is only one option. Another option is to actually better manage the sewage load. What does better managing the sewage load mean? Okay, I'll take for example, if you say you have an undeveloped a catchment, an urban catchment, where you have certain developments going on into the catchment, it's better to centralize and dislodge your effluent to a segment of the river that has a larger carrying capacity. Because what's happening now is some of our developments are very sporadic. Yeah, some are on the west side of a catchment, and otherwise on the northeastern side. So everything is very sporadic, and everybody does their own treatment. At the end of the day, the cumulative loading that comes out is substantial, and you're still incurring pollution to the river system. So better management and better strategies in terms of deploying and managing the affluent load, I think that is also imperative. That's also imperative. So we're not just talking about improving the treatment efficiency, but how do you strategize? Where do you put your discharge? Where do you put your sewage treatment plant? That's also critical. Besides that, also you can also do effluent recovery. Means rather than discharge the effluent, you recover the effluent, you recycle the effluent, and channel it. That can be used for other purposes and for other industries that requires water but doesn't necessarily require high grade quality water. So it's not a one size fits all kind of solution. The strategy what I call this has to be right. So that is in an urban setting. If you go to a rural setting, typically, as Randolph mentioned, the main issue is sediment pollution, erosion. In a rural setting, erosion typically comes from one, of course, you have uncontrolled logging activities. But the second thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for saying this, but the fact of the matter is, Malaysia, we are the second largest oil palm producer in the world. That's the fact of the matter. We are the second. So what that entails is massive clearing of areas for oil palm plantation. So oil palm plantation incurs erosion as well. And because you are the second largest oil palm producer in the world, that also incurs massive erosion. But what makes matters worse is when you have unsustainable oil palm practices, oil palm agriculture practices. For example, when you when you do your oil palm plantations all the way up to the riverbank, you encroach the river buffer itself, the river buffer zone. So everything becomes botak. It becomes clear. So that also causes erosion, because this riparian zone, the buffer zone, the riparian zone, that functions as a natural biofilter. So when you clear all the way up to the riverbank, this undoubtedly will cause erosion. There's no biofilter anymore. So these are the types of significant pollution sources that you need to deal with. Okay, Randolph?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaki. Okay, I think we are reaching the end of our session now, unless there's any major questions. I'd just like to pose two questions to all the panelists. Number one, going back to our original question, has COVID-19 given our rivers hope? Okay, just a short answer on that. And secondly, what would be the direction of our new ministry as we move forward? Okay, the new ministry as well as Department of Environment. Okay, let me just start off with Dr. Nohayati first.
Yes. Thank you, Randolph. I believe, yes, COVID-19 has definitely impacted how might we reacted to the maturity of the nature healing in itself. Of course, awareness and education is one thing. I've seen some comments and I agreed with the comments given in the chat box that values is also important as to how people react to all of the initiatives that we are doing to conserve and continuously protect our rivers. So it is important to tie science and soul towards the rivers because otherwise things will not work. The public has to play a bigger role in terms of protecting the rivers. We should play a bigger role ourselves. We should begin with ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, next, can I invite Daria? Again, just the same two questions in terms of has COVID-19 given our rivers hope? And what would be the new direction for our ministry? Or what would be the direction for our new ministry, sir?
All right. Yeah, thanks, Randolph. Yeah, I would like to be optimistic as well. Yeah, when it comes to whether there is hope for our rivers, I mean, we have seen that our rivers can bounce, can bounce back to become better, during the MCO. But what it needs is continuous effort. I think a lot of people have, the public, and I believe, even our ministers are saying, they are making comments. They're making comments about how the environment has improved. They talk about less less pollution in the rivers looking clearer, and the skies are clearer. Water pollution and air pollution are reducing. Only yesterday, one of our minister in the Prime Minister's department has said something about how they would want to integrate environmental considerations in the 12 Malaysia plan process. Because the 12 Malaysia is being relooked, taking into consideration the COVID-19 issues and the economic recovery for the country. But definitely, the word environment was actually mentioned by the minister himself. Yeah, so I think, as I say, I'm optimistic. The public needs to continue to demand for our ministries, our decision makers, and our planners, to do what's needed for the environment. There is a worry that while the country wants to be back on track in terms of our economic development, that maybe some original, some allocation that was pre-MCO, pre-COVID-19, was meant for environment, that may be taken away and redirected to somewhere else, which is non-environment related. That is very likely to happen. But I think there are channels. There are channels for public to also voice their opinion. We have a lot of expertise within our agencies as well, who could really defend their justification for the need to look at greener solutions moving forward. So I would like to take a positive a positive stand on the questions you posed, Randolph, but pending all the other aspects that I had mentioned just now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Daria. Lynn?
Yes. Okay, firstly, I think yes, the silver lining of COVID-19 is that it may have given us a snapshot of what happens when pollution load in our rivers are reduced. People can see that there is actually, I mean, it's possible that the rivers can, recover if we stop, if we just reduce what we are doing to it. On the ministry part, I believe that the ministry and the general narrative should actually shift from just complying to the regulation limits and towards pollution loading. Also, at the same time, the public needs to be more aware of where their water sources are coming from, and stop pushing the blame to the water supply operators, lah. Because that's what they always do when water cuts happen. But actually, it's a bigger picture than that, lah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ling. A quick one from Dr. Zaki.
Okay, hello, yeah. Okay, the first question was what? Like COVID-19 has given us hope. I think COVID-19 hasn't done anything. What has done is the MCO. The MCO has given us a glimpse as to what the potential for river water quality, the potential for river water quality in the country. The question now is what happens post MCO. Yeah, this is worrying, if you ask me, because the fact of the matter is, this is a very difficult question to answer, because the fact of the matter is, now the economy has been better because of the MCO. So priorities now is with the economy. This is the fact of the matter. So the question now is, will environmental preservation take a back seat after this? Will the river become worse? Will the air quality become worse? Did everyone know that even the US EPA has relaxed regulatory enforcement on air pollution? Did you know that? In light of the COVID-19 pandemic? So even the US EPA, mind you, one of the top agencies in environmental protection, has relaxed enforcement measures. Because of this pandemic, because of the lockdown. So I'm worried. There's a very difficult question to answer, actually. That's the question. The second thing is second question, the state government and all.
Sorry, our new ministry.
Oh, the new ministry. Okay, right. I think what's lacking right now is direction, if you ask me. That's the main issue. It's very difficult to get everybody to sit together because the water sector is so diversified across so many fields, and everybody thinks they're right. That's the issue. So the thing is this. I think the thing that everybody can agree upon is that everybody wants the river to be cleaner, whatever field, whatever sector you're in, right? So I think that's the thing. So what we need now is we need to set up what I call targets, common targets for everybody, irrespective of sector, irrespective of whatever stakeholder, for them to follow and work towards the common direction. And I'm not talking about just integrated, formalizing the integrated management, because we'll be talking about integrated management for a very long time. But I'm just talking about setting common goals and common targets. So you integrated, you integrated, you work towards the common goal. So if you ask me, that's more critical. Yeah, I think that's more critical. So I think that's what the ministry needs to do as of the moment. And mind you, water resource is under state purview as the federal constitution. So state buy-in is critical. State buy-in is critical. You won't be able to do it without state buy-in. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zaki. Okay, so I mean, just to wrap up today's session. I'd like to thank everyone for staying with us right to the end. I think the points raised is important. Number one is actually that our rivers are actually very, very important, although a lot of people have not realized that. Okay, all our water supply actually comes from our rivers. So it's not only for the rivers are not only for fisheries, etc., but more importantly, it's actually for us. Okay, and the thing is actually for a lot of us who have been in the field for a very long time, I think we have actually almost given up hope on all the efforts. Okay, we are challenged with economic activities, with the growth in population. the other issue that we have in terms of how we actually manage our rivers actually through concentrations rather than loads. So I think that one way to move forward, as Dr. Zaki has mentioned, that we need to set up targets for each of our river systems. The targets actually reflect the carrying capacity of the river. Okay, once we have targets, then we can look into loading. Okay, and I think if we don't start now, then really this small hope that we have, rightly as pointed out by Dr. Zaki in terms of the impact of MCO, that small glimmer of hope will be lost. Okay. So that said, of course, as we move on after the MCO, enforcement and regulation needs to be stepped up. But more importantly, as Dr. Zaki has mentioned, we need common targets. We all need to adopt common targets, all ministries and departments, so that we all look at the river with the same perspective. Okay? And at the end of the day, as Dr. Zaki has mentioned, we all want to have clean rivers. Okay, I think there's no one out there who says, I do not want a clean river. So we want clean rivers, but the thing is actually there's a lot of work to be done right now. And if we don't get serious right now, then I think any hope that we have will be lost. Okay. So I just would like to end the session first of all by thanking our panelists, Dr. Zaki, Dr. Noor Hayati, Datin Daria, and of course my colleague Ling. That said, if you have any questions, of course, or any inquiries, you can of course email us. I think my colleague Ming will share our emails. All our emails contact us about anything related to this topic. We do face a serious risk in terms of a ramp up of economic activities after the MCO is lifted. And I think we should be wary of that, and I think all agencies should be wary of that. Okay, so I just would like to say thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Yeah, I targeted to end, yes, by around 11:30. We have extended a bit, but I hope that you also can join us in some of ERE's next forums. Okay? So just say thank you, and then I'll just let the other speakers, of course, also give some last goodbyes. Okay.
Thanks for participating, everyone, and thank you for your questions and for attending this seminar.
Datin Daria, would you like to go?
Yeah, right. Yes, same here. I would like to thank everyone, but to ERE especially, because this is a very pertinent subject to discuss. And I think, I hope more discussions like this can be continued. And maybe in future, we could also get, people from the authorities or the ministry, if we were to have, these topics again in future. Thank you, ERE, and thank you to fellow panelists. A learning, session for me to exchange and learn from others. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to ERE for the invitation. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ERE, for the invitation. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. Like to wish all of you, I guess, Selamat Hari Raya in 2 weeks' time. And stay safe and selamat berbuka. Happy Iftar. All right, thank you again. Take care. Bye.
Remember to stay at home. Okay, thank you.
Stay home.
Bye.
Stay safe.